Welcome to Muslim Apologetics Australia. In this discussion, we'll be discussing how Jesus of the Bible committed suicide. Now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say he didn't do that. But in this discussion, we're going to go through the clear details where Jesus committed suicide in the Bible, and there's no ifs or buts about it. Christian missionaries always bring up the case of suicide, as you know, suicide bombers, suicide Islam, suicide this, suicide that. Now, I'm not justifying suicide by going into the Bible to show where Jesus committed suicide, but I'm merely showing, the Quran is clear that you shouldn't commit suicide. Do not kill yourselves, right? And I'll post a verse in the description section of this video. But I'm going to show you now where Jesus himself killed himself in order to forgive your sins. We'll go to a discussion between me and a Christian, a very short discussion, and we'll see the counter rebuttal between the two. So I asked a Christian called Sydney the question, and he's from Australia. I said to him, can someone show me where in the Bible it explicitly says do not commit suicide? You know, we've got verses in the Bible that says, they shall not kill and so forth, but that is very vague. There's exceptions. You can kill in war, you can kill animals to eat in order to eat. So I wanted something explicit, and the Christians don't have something explicit except for they shall not kill, but that still is not explicit. It's pretty vague. It doesn't say they shall not commit suicide. So a Christian came back and he said, his name is Sirius Smith. He quotes 1 Corinthians 3:16-17. It says, know you not that you are the temple of God, and the Spirit of God dwelleth in you? Verse 17, he says, if any man defile the temple of God, him shall God destroy. For the temple of God is holy, which temple? So he's talking about this particular verse, saying, defiling your body and so forth. This is apparently the temple of God, and you shouldn't do that because God will destroy you. So my response to him, in 1 Corinthians 3:16-17, the term defile does not mean murder. It could mean violate, like abuse your own body. Furthermore, your own Jesus defiled his own body in order to save you from your sins. Thus, this would mean your Jesus committed a sin. In fact, we are told Jesus had power to give life and end his own life. Thus, he proved of his own suicide. Sirius Smith then says, in response, this is a Christian, he says in response, Jesus was the Lamb that takes away the sin of the world. His very reason for coming to earth was to die on the cross as the last sacrifice and to give atonement for all who believe. Right? How is that even a response? And my reply back to him was, well, the death of Jesus to die as a lamb, he performed the greatest act of worship by killing himself in order to forgive your sins. So the greatest act of worship is suicide in the Bible. He writes back and he says, this is a Christian, Sirius Smith, he writes back, he says, Jesus did not commit suicide. He was murdered. And my reply back to him was, Sirius Smith, if you say Jesus was murdered, that would mean he did not come to die. Rather, he was wrongfully murdered. In fact, why call it murder when it was part of worship for him to be killed? In fact, those who tried to kill him should be rewarded because they helped Jesus forgive all the sins of the world. That is why the Father sent him to do the will of God, that is to be killed. So it was Yahweh who orchestrated the whole event. Furthermore, Christians tell us Jesus wished for death in order for sins to be forgiven. So that is murder-suicide, my friend. Christians tell us Jesus willingly went to the cross. There is no way out of it. Jesus wanted his own death, and if Jesus was given the opportunity to pull out, he wouldn't have accepted it. Why? Because he couldn't have forgiven your sins without shedding his own blood. That, my friend, is pure suicide. So there you have it, folks. Jesus committed his own murder-suicide in order to forgive your sins. and he wouldn't have moved away from it. He wouldn't have pulled out away from it. If the Jews or the Romans gave him the opportunity to let him go and say, you're a free man, go away, we don't want to deal with you, Jesus will come back and say, I have to do the will of God, you have to kill me. So yes, Jesus yearned willingly for his own death. That is suicide. Goodbye.